Jewish Zionist Barbara Spector, Paideia, Sweden. Funded by the Swedish government. Part of quote taken from a Twitter comment. Please see video info for link.
I think there's a resurgence of anti-Semitism because at this point in time Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural, and I think we're gonna be part of the throes of that transformation, which must take place. Europe has not yet learned how to be multicultural. Europe is not going to be the monolithic societies that they once were in the last century. Jews are going to be at the center of that. It's a huge transformation for Europe to make. They are now going into a multicultural mode, and Jews will be resented because of our leading role. But without that leading role, and without that transformation, Europe will not survive. Every journey begins with a first step. We must end the so-called white race. What is the white race? Define it for me. It's an 18th century social construct designed by privileged aristocrats.
Jewish author Maurice Samuels. You Gentiles page 155.
When Germany and England and America will long have lost their present identity or purpose, we shall still be strong in ours. We Jews, we are the destroyers and will remain the destroyers. Nothing you can do will meet our demands and needs. We will forever destroy because we want a world of our own.
Jewish Ben Wattenberg.
The non-Europeanization of America is heartening news of an almost transcendental quality.
Gregor Gysi, head of Germany's third largest political party, the Left, Die Linke. Of Jewish ancestry.
Live better without Nazis, diversity is our future. Countries like Poland, who are very Catholic, have to be willing to accept more refugees. Oh, and by the way, every year more native Germans die than there are born. This is very fortunate. It's because the Nazis are not very good at having offspring. The decline of Germans is why they are so dependent on immigration from foreign countries.
Jewish Harry Wadden. A program for the Jews and an answer to all anti-Semites. A program for humanity.
The Jews welcome this revolution in the Christian world. It is not an accident that Judaism gave birth to Marxism, and it is not an accident that the Jews readily took up Marxism. All this was in perfect accord with the progress of Judaism and the Jews. Since the Jews are the highest and most cultured people on earth, the Jews have a right to subordinate to themselves the rest of mankind and to be the masters over the whole earth. Now, indeed, this is the historic destiny of the Jews. p. 99, Judaism is communism, internationalism, the universal brotherhood of man, the emancipation of the working class and the human society. It is with these spiritual weapons that the Jews will conquer the world and the human race.
Jewish Zionist ISI Leibler.
There is a need to sit together and establish a way in which Australians can recapture that spirit of multiculturalism which I think we are all proud being part and parcel of. Multiculturalism has no place in Israel.
Jewish Isidore Loeb. Le Problème Juif.
Nations will gather together to bring their homage to the people of God. The whole fortune of nations will pass into the hands of the Jewish people. They will march behind the Jewish people, in chains as captives, and will prostrate before it.
Jewish Israel Zangwill, founding member of the Fabian Society, the Voice of Jerusalem, 1921.
Men form one universal brotherhood, their individual lives, their nations, and races, interbreed and blend and go on to merge again at last in one common human. This conclusion was in fact the starting point of Hebrew literature. This new world order would reduce racial frictions to a minimum by the world policy of the open door. Bolshevism may be good or bad, but the United States of Russia would be in greater congruity with world peace than a swarm of conflicting nationalities. With the arrival in France of President Wilson, the champion of the League of Nations, the most momentous episode in all human history begins. Judaism stands to gain the repossession of Palestine. And if this could be united with the setting up of Jerusalem as the seat of the League of Nations, the Hebrew metropolis would become at once the center and symbol of the new era. In such a world, would it matter if we Jews did have a single nationality, if within all these leagued nations there was this still finer core of comradeship?
Letter by Jewish Karl Marx to Jewish Baruch Levi, quoted in Revue de Paris, edition of June 1, 1928, p. 574.
The Jewish people as a whole will be its own Messiah. It will attain world domination by the dissolution of other races, and by the establishment of a world republic in which everywhere the Jews will exercise the privilege of citizenship. In this new world order the children of Israel will furnish all the leaders without encountering opposition.
Max Horkheimer, the Marxist Jew of the Frankfurt School.
The revolution won't happen with guns, rather it will happen incrementally, year by year, generation by generation. We will gradually infiltrate their educational institutions and their political offices, transforming them slowly into Marxist entities as we move towards universal egalitarianism.
Jewish Mordecai Nissan, Kionim, official publication of the World Zionist Organization, p. 151-156, August, 1984.
If Gentiles refuse to live a life of inferiority, then this signals their rebellion and the unavoidable necessity of Jewish warfare against their very presence.
Jewish Nathan Glazer, American Judaism p. 9.
There are different branches of Judaism today, and they take somewhat different attitudes to assimilation, but even the most liberal interpretation of Judaism must fight the assimilation of the Jews. Jews have been prominent in the fight to forward the assimilation of ethnic groups, yet there comes a time, and it is just about upon us, when American Jews become aware of a contradiction between the kind of society America wants it to become and indeed the kind of society most Jews want it to be and the demands of the Jewish religion. This religion, after all, prohibits intermarriage, asserts that Jews are a people apart, and insists that they consider themselves in exile until God restores them to the land of Israel.
Noel Ignatieff, Harvard University professor and co-founder of Race Trader magazine.
If you are a white male, you don't deserve to live. You are a cancer, you're a disease. White males have never contributed anything positive to the world. Eventually white women can breed out, but my feeling is that if you are a white male, you should kill yourself now. If you are a thoughtful person, with a social consciousness who considers himself white, you will consider suicide. It's the right thing to do.
Rabbi A. Feinberg, Maclean's Mag, September 5, 1967.
The only way to a final solution to racial prejudice is to create a melange of races so universal that no one can preen himself on his racial purity. Deliberate encouragement of interracial marriages is the only way to hasten this process. The dominance of our world has begun to shift, like cargo in a listing vessel, from the white races to the colored. We will never eliminate racial prejudice until we eliminate separate races.
Rabbi Baruch Efrati, a yeshiva head and community rabbi in the West Bank settlement of Efrat.
Jews should rejoice at the fact that Christian Europe is losing its identity as a punishment for what it did to us for the hundreds of years we're in exile there. We will never forgive Europe's Christians for slaughtering millions of our children, women, and elderly. Not just in the recent Holocaust, but throughout the generations, in a consistent manner which characterizes all factions of hypocritical Christianity. And now, Europe is losing its identity in favor of another people and another religion, and there will be no remnants and survivors from the impurity of Christianity, which shed a lot of blood it won't be able to atone for. Jews must pray that the Islamization of most of Europe will not harm the people of Israel.
Rabbi Emanuel Rabinovich, speaking before a special meeting of the Emergency Council of European Rabbis in Budapest on January 12, 1952 concerning progress towards their NWO. First published in Common Sense, republished in Canadian Intelligence Service, and Pawns in the Game, by Captain William Guy Carr, p. 104-107.
We will openly reveal our identity with the races of Asia and Africa. I can state with assurance that the last generation of white children is now being born. Our control commissions will, in the interests of peace and wiping out interracial tensions, forbid the whites to mate with whites. The white women must cohabit with members of the dark races, the white men with black women. Thus the white race will disappear, for mixing the dark with the white means the end of the white man, and our most dangerous enemy will become only a memory. Our superior intelligence will easily enable us to retain mastery over a world of dark peoples.
Rabbi Ishmael Levitz.
It is in the Jewish interest, it is in humanity's interest that whites experience a genocide. Until white children are burned alive, white women raped, mutilated, murdered, and all white men who have not been slaughtered watch powerlessly as their people are terrorized, only then will mankind be on a more equal footing, ready to discuss white privilege and the apparent chip on the shoulder that minorities have.
Rabbi Martin Siegel.
I am devoting my lecture in this seminar to a discussion of the possibility that we are now entering a Jewish century, a time when the spirit of the community, the non-ideological blend of the emotional and rational and the resistance to categories and forms will emerge through the forces of anti-nationalism to provide us with a new kind of society. I call this process the Judaization of Christianity because Christianity will be the vehicle through which this society becomes Jewish.
Richard Nicolaus Agero von Coudenhove-Kaler G. 1925, founder of the EU.
Today's races and classes will gradually disappear owing to the vanishing of space, time, and prejudice. The Eurasian Negroid race, similar in its appearance to the ancient Egyptians, will replace the diversity of peoples. Instead of destroying European Jewry, Europe, will against its own will turn Europe into a mixed race of Asians and Negroes through this artificial selection process. The man of the future will be mixed race. Russian Jewish Bolshevism constitutes a decisive step towards this purpose, where a small group of Jewish communist spiritual aristocrats govern the country. The general staff of both are recruited from Europe's spiritual leader race, the Jews. From the European quantity people, two quality races rise up, blood aristocracy and Jewry, both believe in their higher mission of their better blood. The superiority of their spirit predestines them to become a main factor of the future nobility.
Crypto-Jew Nicolas Sarkozy, former president of France.
The goal is to meet the challenge of racial interbreeding. The challenge of racial interbreeding that faces us in the 21st century. It's not a choice, it's an obligation. It's imperative. We cannot do otherwise. We risk finding ourselves confronted with major problems. We must change, therefore we will change. We are going to change all at the same time. In business, in administration, in education, in the political parties. And we will obligate ourselves as to results. If this volunteerism does not work for the Republic, then the state will move to still more coercive measures. The challenge of racial interbreeding that France has always known. And in meeting the challenge of racial interbreeding, France is faithful to its history.
Jewish Israel Cohen, A Racial Program for the 20th Century, 1912.
We must realize that our party's most powerful weapon is racial tensions. By propounding into the consciousness of the dark races that for centuries they have been oppressed by whites, we can mold them to the program of the Communist Party. In America we will aim for subtle victory. While inflaming the Negro minority against the whites, we will endeavor to instill in the whites a guilt complex for their exploitation of the Negroes. We will aid the Negroes to rise in prominence in every walk of life, in the professions and in the world of sports and entertainment. With this prestige, the Negro will be able to intermarry with the whites and begin a process which will deliver America to our cause.